a little breezy.
Afternoon breezy today.
I know.
Nice.
I was feeling it off the left when I was hitting those wedge shots. I'm like, I'm just going to start this a little bit left. We good? We may be live. Good. Guys, how are you? Happy Tuesday. It's definitely a happy Tuesday for us out here in Southern California. We have a very special guest on the channel, Mr. Dill. Good to see you, amigo.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
It's always a treat to be down here at this time of year. I think we should just move home base and
I think we should
just join you guys down here.
I got to mention, it's a little warmer.
Yeah, a little warmer, a little brighter. I think getting up this morning at 6 and can have a little wander down the beach was not a rough way to start the day. Guys, we're going to dive into all things wedges. Obviously, we're out here, we're sort of doing some work with Aaron and the team. We're going to look at a little bit of tour stuff and obviously over to you guys. We are not going to get into, as you know, there's embargoes around all of the new products for 2024. We're not going to get into that today, so don't even waste the time putting the question out in there. We cannot touch those for a little bit of time. So anything around wedges in general, the Vokey World Tour, we'll dive into all of that with AD today. But take advantage of it. This is a really special opportunity for us, and it is for you guys as well. So when's the next stop out on tour? When do you head back out?
Start on Sunday.
Is it
RSM.
Really?
RSM. Yeah, right around the corner. So I've been home for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
It's been nice to be at home, be with the family, get caught up on some things around the office. But RSM will be next on the list.
Wow. How was prepping all the guys? There was a lot of players at the Ryder Cup playing Vokey product.
There was.
It was a busy spell for you, I would imagine.
Well, we're very proud of that. But getting guys ready to go and doing some research. Will Harvey over in the UK, I reached out to him and said, hey, I need some intel on this golf course.
Amazing.
I think I know what's going on, but he was able to go out there, take a look, take some photos, and give us some insight into what we think is the best sort of setup for that type of golf.
And that takes some real professional integrity to give you all those answers when he is clearly pulling for the other team that you're pulling for.
He's pretty proud of his team.
I know.
They played awesome, so we have a little jab at each other occasionally.
It's a lot of fun. All right, boys. Well, we've got Cody and producer Patrick behind the camera and on the questions. Do we have any coming in, Pat?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Okay, no worries. We'll dive into that in a second. So RSM, have you got the new players coming off, or the sort of Corn Ferry finals? Will you see some new faces out there?
I wouldn't say we'll see some new faces.
Right.
Some of the graduates we'll start seeing them at the Sony.
Right.
Right now, there are some guys who are floating back and forth between the KFT and the PGA Tour, so we'll see some of those guys. But really, this is kind of a fun way to end the season and say, hey, thanks for everything, thanks for the partnership.
Yeah.
How can we help you prepare for 24? And just sort of celebrate another great season.
Amazing. What were some of the kind of, as we wrap the season up, what are some of the sort of most memorable sort of moments that you'll take with you moving forward?
That's a good question. I'm very proud of the successes that we've had. We've had a lot of great wins. We've been able to partner with a lot of great players. While we're not hitting any golf shots, it's nice to participate in some of those victories. So, our team worldwide has never been more connected as well, which is something I'm very proud of. I think it's really easy for some of our teammates around the world to feel like they're sort of on an island somewhere.
Absolutely.
And we've spent a lot of time and effort trying to connect with them and learn from them, because I think golf around the world is so different than it is here domestically. So learning from those different environments and different courses is going to be key in how we develop going forward.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, Liam and the UK guys on the European Tour, they, even seeing them when they were out here, last time we were out here for the T-Series Iron Lounge, we got a chance to catch up with Liam and just sort of seeing him interact with Marnie and the team and just everyone really. There was a lot of people in there and giving their sort of 2 cents on tour and some of the things they like. And, it's nice to hear there's some healthy disagreements, in terms of what they like to see on different tours. I mean, what it might be sort of a preference on the PGA Tour may be different on DP World Tour.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so valuable at having Liam and his team over. Our team from Korea, Japan, et cetera. We want some objective feedback.
Right.
We want these guys to challenge us and say, hey, this isn't working, or these are some of the things we're learning and hearing from our players. That's how individuals like myself and Bob and Kevin and Ron, our team, how we learn. We don't just sit around and say we're just gonna do this and that and that's what we're gonna get. All this feedback is brought to us from everywhere, and that's really how we do our best work.
Right. Love it. Very, very cool.
Question.
Okay.
Would you suggest matching your wedge shaft with your iron shaft?
That's a great question. This is a really common thing that we talk about is there's this confusion associated with what wedge shaft is the best for me.
Right.
It doesn't have to be confusing. It doesn't have to be complicated. We've used Dynamic Gold S200 in our product forever.
Yeah.
And there's a reason. It's got a lot of weight, it's got a lot of feel. Those are the two things that we really focus on with choosing the right wedge shaft. Now, if you're going to go get fit, which we always recommend, whatever you're playing in the irons, you can typically push that right into the pitch and the gap.
Yep.
Now, I usually suggest that for the higher ball speed players. And then as you start to increase loft, a little softer, but maintain the weight.
Right.
On the PGA Tour, Dynamic Gold S400 is the #1 shaft we use.
Yep.
If you're a KBS guy, high rev 125S.
Right.
If you're a Nippon guy, the Modus Wedge 125 is awesome. But again, kind of the same sort of DNA. We've got weight and feel associated. Now, if you're a little bit slower in ball speeds, you can basically take what's in those fitted irons and push that all the way through, because you really want to make sure you maintain that feel. We would never encourage somebody to go so stiff that they would feel less when they're around the greens.
Absolutely. I would add a really interesting one recently, AD, and it kind of was, I guess, the reverse of conventional wisdom. That I was doing a fit with a really good friend of mine, and he had his WedgeWorks wedges, which they had the stock wedge shaft in them. He was warming up and he was hitting really, really high quality shots. And he's a good player. He's around kind of 1 handicap. And then he moved into his irons with some Axiom 75s, and he really started to struggle a little bit with contact. And I'll go back to that wedge for me a second. And we actually ended up reverse engineering his fit from how well he hit his wedges back into his irons, and we ended up giving him the weight back. Now, I guess that he had ended up in the lighter weight as a prescription relevant to his speed. So he maybe swings 6 iron at like 80, right? Somebody wanted him to get a little bit quicker, but we saw that he was actually able to sort of hit all of those speed metrics and distance gaps easily with that slightly heavier shaft, and that was kind of reversing it back from the wedge. And you know, normally we go the other way, but it was really, really cool to see how well he timed the wedge shaft. So we just built it all the way through for him.
Yeah, it's funny. If you spend the time getting fit and exploring those different things, you might learn a great deal about your game and some things that work best for you. I think it's easy to assume that if you're a slower ball speed guy, I should be in something light and something graphite and something this. It doesn't always make sense. So you have to explore that with a trusted fitter or a partner that kind of knows the ins and outs of wedge design and what works best for you, or excuse me, shaft design and what works best.
Awesome.
From Brian Randall, can you explain the differences between the V, D, and M grinds?
V, D, and M. There's very, very similar looks to all three of those, the V, D, and the M. When we are designing these different soles, we're taking into consideration attack angles, how soft conditions are, what type of grasses you're in. We're seeing a lot of these grainier styles of grasses, a lot of these Bermuda-style grasses. So we're seeing a lot of players gravitate to a little bit more bounce. The D, in my opinion, is the highest of those bounce-styled soles, right? You've got a lot of forward bounce. You also have a trailing edge with some polishing, but it still has a lot of material. So if you're in those softer conditions, it's a pretty nice fit.
Right.
Now, if you're going to go a step lower, go down to that V. A lot of forward bounce, but more of that trailing edge angle that you get out of that M grind. So if I'm steep on the square stuff, I love the V angle, but I still want to have the versatility around the greens.
Right.
And then that M would just be one fraction, one step lower in terms of bounce kind of everywhere, right? So in your case,
I was going to say, was that Ian Fraser that asked that question?
Was that you?
Yeah, it might
so I
be.
think in your case, when you talk about how important the fitting aspect is it's really easy to just assume like, hey, I'm a steeper guy, I'm playing in soft conditions, I'm either a DV or an M guy, which one am I? Got to go and kind of run through those courses. Now, in your case, because we've worked together a little bit in the past, I know that speed is an important part of your game, and encouraging you to swing a little faster will produce those higher, softer falling with more spin style shots.
Right.
The M is a better option because now you're taking away a lot of that push that you're going to get from the higher bounce stuff and allowing that wedge to work its magic and hit the ball higher.
And you've kept me in the higher bounce in the sand wedge and given me sort of the versatility that if I choose to open it and play with the look of it a little bit, and by opening it, we're going to add some anyway, knowing that you're giving me some kind of runway there to sort of change the look of the wedge address.
Absolutely, but remember that when we're building these matrices, wedges, I'm not giving you the same thing across the board, right? There's always a rhyme and reason as to why you're going to play this grind and this loft. You know, in the sand wedge, usually that's this fairway club, but maybe a little green side, so you want bounce, but you don't want bounce. And then around the greens, you know, it's how do I find the perfect balance of I need bunker play, I need opening up the face, I need all these different things, and that's where you really have to vary those grinds, give yourself some options.
For sure, for sure.
From MB Golf, bulky spin mill 760, 04L. What is comparable grind in 58?
Which of the two?
That was
Spin milled
SM760L.
Okay.
What's comparable?
Comparable grind in 58.
Well, if I had to compare something, I mean, you'd want to move into a tee. I think that's probably your closest option. So, you know, anything on the lower bounce spectrum, I think, is a big help, especially if you want to match trajectories and spins.
Right. Cool.
Can you explain the limited edition A grind?
Limited edition A
yeah.
grind. Yeah.
Fresh.
Yeah, it's fresh as of, gosh, I think a day or two now.
I know.
So that's a cool wedge. You know, people always wonder how we come up with these different things, and when you look at what Bob Vokey has done over the 20-plus years of being a part of Titleist, it all really stems from having what he calls the best R&D department in the world, the PGA Tour.
PGA Tour, yeah.
That still kind of remains the same sort of thing, and so as we're working with the best players in the world, regardless of if it's the LPGA, the Champions Tour, whatever, they're constantly challenging us. You know, golf courses are changing, grasses are changing, so the A grind really stems from some needs that Jeff Ogilvy had in 2016. You know, he was at the John Deere Classic, which is a really soft golf course. He said, I'm going to be going to Australia, playing on the sand belt. We know that that's a really firm, fast, tight golf course or style of golf course. He goes, what do you think I should do? So we started exploring. You know, we took L grinds and T grinds, and we polished them up, messed with them over and over again. And he goes, oh my gosh, this is the one. So essentially, it's an L grind where we've taken the center ribbon and we polished that down. And it looks, if you guys remember some older models that we used to have back in the day, if you're familiar with the E grind, there are some similarities. The major difference is it's actually 3 degrees less measured with a little bit of camber.
Right.
So it's very thin. I think a lot of people ask us too, they go, what's the difference between the A and the K? A is very thin, K is very wide. Right. So you're talking about a wedge that moves really fast through the turf, has a lower launch, and a ton of spin. So it's that perfect balance of, I'm playing firm golf courses, I have good hands, I want to manage my trajectory and keep my spin up.
Love that. Love that.
From Kyle H. Aaron, how much do you remember what each tour player needs?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm fortunate to work with 150 plus PGA Tour players a year.
That's insane.
And they all have different needs. I mean, they're different grinds. They have different visual cues they look for, different sounds. You know, so all these players are sharing all this information, right? I could tell you what Steve Stricker wants to this day. I could build you a wedge right now without even looking at his specs. Same thing with Justin Thomas. Same thing with Jordan Spieth. That's maybe one of the things that my wife wishes I was better at, is remembering the little things in our relationship. All the things that I remember as we build golf clubs. That information is really important in how we not only manage our relationships, but we build new ones. We're paying attention. I'm thinking about the profile that Jordan Spieth wants on his 60 degree, which is an old shape. It's really round. I'm thinking about the leading edge heights that somebody like Wyndham Clark would want when he rests his 60A on the ground. You know, what are the spin numbers of the flight characteristics that a Cam Young wants on his 52? So the little things that they share with me are little tidbits of knowledge that I keep, and I'll even put them in my phone. I'll put them in my notes. I'll be like, he likes this, and he wants this. And even in our app system that we use every single week, I'm constantly updating that with the information that I think is valuable for future orders.
And how regular is it, Eddie, with these guys? Once you kind of get them dialed in, what is the cadence which they'll come back again and maybe want to freshen things up, new grooves, or make some refinements? How often will you see players?
Well, I try and see them a lot. So you have some players who, let's say they play 3 of our wedges, and they're extremely low maintenance, right? Those players, like JT Poston, I have to go and bug him and say, I think it's time. It's been 3 months. We need to update your lob wedge. But then you have some players who are constantly reaching out, looking for advice, who want some information. Maybe they want to change a grind or they want to add some spin. And so when we talk about wedge replenishment or cleaning, putting fresh grooves in the bag, we have a 1 through 4 system where we tell players, if you're using 4 wedges, let's say 46, 50, 54, 58, you're going to go through one or maybe 2 of the 46s.
Yep.
And then maybe 2 or 3, 1 to 2 of the gaps. And then you're going to start to increase how many you use as you increase loft,
Yep.
right? Because you're going to see rapid spin decay in those higher lofts much more than you would the 46.
Right.
You know,
right.
so a guy like Justin Thomas,
Mm-hmm.
he might play a pitching wedge and gap wedge for a year and a half.
Right.
You know, unless it's damaged. And then once you get into that sand wedge, which he uses around the greens all the time, we're going to probably do 4 to 6 of those a year.
Mm-hmm.
And that lob wedge, we might do as many as 10.
Really?
Yeah, because it really is important, right?
Yeah.
These guys they're doing this every day. They're hitting a lot of bunker shots, so
Right.
their spin decay is going to happen a lot faster. But for players, consumers especially, anybody who is watching this or anybody you or I work
Yeah.
with who are not playing on tour, it's important to have fresh grooves in those higher lofts. You're going to see it, you're going to notice it, and you're going to give yourself a better opportunity to have that proximity tight around flags.
Yeah, that's a big part of what you guys have found from your research and your data is that the sort of loss or the decrease in performance with degradation of the groove is really significant. And I know people think it's around, you know what, they just want to move product. It's not. It's really to help you guys. It's up to you whether you do it or not. No one's putting your arm up your back, but if you want to play your best, you're going to want to mitigate the performance sort of dips when those grooves are done.
It's amazing on a lob wedge especially, right? You may not see it as much on your pitches, gaps, and sands,
Right.
but a lob wedge, especially over time, because you just kind of get used to that flight creeping up and you
Yeah.
don't even really notice it.
Right.
But if you've had one for 3 or 4 years and you get yourself a new one, it's
Yeah.
amazing how much more control you have of your golf ball.
Totally.
From Greg Wayne, I use a 1-inch long and 2-degree up with my T100s. Should I use the same with my wedges?
So first thing I'd ask is, were you fit? That's the first thing I'd ask. And if you were fit, you probably are a very tall gentleman.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, it probably wouldn't hurt you to have a little extra length. I will tell you that wedges tend to be on the shorter side. There's a reason for that.
Yeah.
You know, Sevy used to tell Bob, short shot, short club. and so, you know, we still joke about that to this day, but there is some truth associated with that, right? Those clubs that you are using around the greens to get it close to a flag to make more birdies, the longer they are, the harder they are to control.
Right.
And so, you know, I'd probably say if you're an inch over standard and 2 degrees up, you're probably going to want to go at least a half on
Yeah.
the wedges. And I would just pay attention to what the ball's telling you with the lies. It doesn't always mean that the lies need to be 2 degrees up. You know, definitely go get fit, take a look at ball flight, and let an expert give you some advice on what they think is best.
Yeah, it sounds like a case where you almost couldn't afford not to be fit in a case like that, because there's
For sure.
lots of reasons whether, because obviously when we're adding length, we're adding some more sort of upright lie angle to the club. But when you're adding it through the static measurement as well, there may be some swing reasons that don't apply to the short game, that apply to the long game, and there may be some handle raising, some things that people do with the face that
Sure.
don't happen with wedges. That, you know, we see some changes to technique as we get into sort of less sort of exertion in the swing speed.
Yeah, I will say that, you know, on the PGA Tour, the majority of the players that I work with, a lot of them are right around standard or maybe a quarter over.
Right.
And these are some tall players.
Yep.
There's some big guys out there. Now, obviously, if you're one of the really tall guys, you know, you're 6'4", 6'5",
Right.
half an inch.
Sure.
You know, I think
Yep.
that's pretty standard. But the other thing to be cautious of is swing weight, right? If your specs aren't, your equipment's not put together in a way where you could manage your swing weight,
Yep.
clubs could get pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So you just want to be careful about that.
Cool.
Daniel Winterbottom. I'm looking to go to St. Ives in the UK for a fitting in 2024. What makes the Titleist Fitting Center unique for wedge fitting?
Oof. I mean, how close is Woburn close to St. Ives? Are they pretty?
I think they're a little ways apart from one another, but
do they both offer a wedge experience?
I think St. Ives is the spot you want to go to. Or sorry, Woburn.
Woburn
Excuse
is,
me.
yeah.
Woburn,
yeah, yeah.
Woburn is where you want to
Yeah,
go.
without a doubt, Daniel. Yeah.
That facility is impressive.
Amazing. We were Corey and I were talking about that at dinner last night. How amazing that short game area that they work out there is just insane.
It's just a really well thought out area that just sort of exposes you to a lot of the different sorts of short game shots you'd be tested with.
Right.
But their staff there is really good, and you get premium golf balls, premium equipment. I mean, you can't beat it. If you're going to go get fit, you've got to go to Woburn.
Yeah,
It's
yep.
the best.
Do that, Daniel, for sure.
From Greg Salib, how much do course conditions factor in for tour players chasing drives?
That's great. Great question. Before I answer that, I want to say that it's become very common for us that we are seeing players add a wedge to their bags.
Right.
They don't play an extra 60, but they always bring an extra
Yeah,
60
yeah.
that's different than what they're used to, right? 70% of the courses they play on will fit this one wedge that we fit them into here at Oceanside or wherever. There's 20 to 30% of the courses that they'll see outside of that where they are tested in a softer condition golf course or a firmer condition golf course.
Right.
So you need something else,
Yeah.
right? And when that happens, it's important to have a couple of options that are really going to fit those two different things. So it's pretty common, right? If we switch from bent grass to Bermuda grass or fescue grass, or even massive shifts in soil structure and how much moisture there is, you're gonna see a change in what kind of grinds and bounces players go into.
I will never forget the Tuesday and Wednesday, but specifically the Wednesday, right before the Open last year at St Andrews. And kind of things had died down, right? It was kind of like the forecast was set. It wasn't going to be anything specific, and there was a lot of reps kind of hanging out a little bit, making sure everyone was okay. The absolute busiest person in the room. You were like Roadrunner. You were literally going back and forth. I've never seen anything like it. There was smoke. I was saying that to you, like there's literally smoke coming off your shoes. You're the busiest man in here by a factor of 50.
It was one of the firmer Opens we've been in, right? And I remember getting there. The week before was the Scottish,
Right.
And Will Harvey was there, and he had worked with a bunch of guys ahead of time, and I had mentioned to him, I said, hey, see how many of the guys you can get with beforehand. So it makes our Open a little calmer. So they got all that done, and when they got over there and we got to St. Andrews, we realized, oh my gosh, this place is like concrete.
Baked out.
And so we were out of T's and L's
Oh, man.
by Tuesday at 10 a.m., and I was scrambling. I'm like, okay, now what? What are we going to do now?
You're
So we're
grinding stuff
polishing
down.
anything and everything we can, trying to figure out some things. Fortunately, we got through Wednesday, and I remember walking through 16, 17, 18, feeling that turf in my feet, and beginning to really understand the depth of how different that golf was than it is here domestically. So, you know, those are those places where we see that 5% club really be so important.
Right.
They might only use it the 1 week, but
I know.
it's definitely a very
They're
valuable tool
thankful
there.
for it that week.
For sure. I think
really are.
a lot of guys said that the fairways are running faster than the greens.
Yeah,
So-
that's often the case there.
Yeah.
That really is. Well, guys, huge treat for us to be joined by Aaron today, and thank you for the questions. We have been filming some really cool content that will be coming out the early part of 2024. So, you know, we're excited for you guys to see that, and obviously some things coming down the pipeline. We're really excited for you guys to get your hands on as well. But Eddie, as always,
That was great.
Thank you
Thank you so much.
for having us here at TPI. Guys, stay tuned for more. We'll see you again soon.